Hey party people, Techno here, and in this video we're taking a look at a couple Commando brand padlocks. Now what I have here are two basically identical padlocks. This one just has a slightly different finish as well as this rubber bumper, but everything else about these is identical. And these are older Commando padlocks, and the reason I point that out is there have been upgrades to the product since these locks have been manufactured that improves the overall durability and security of these locks. So just to make that clear, the new ones are a bit more difficult to pick and more physically resistant as well. And clearly what we have here are some laminated steel body padlocks, but they're not just your typical laminated steel body padlock in comparison to a very common example like we have in the Master Lock number 3. These are slightly different in construction, and one aspect where they're different is that we actually have 6 of these rivets holding the lock body together as opposed to 4 commonly. The other thing that Commando does that is quite interesting is you can see where we have these circles. These are actually indentations in the plate, and these plates interlock with each other almost like Legos, and that adds a lot of physical resistance to physical attacks, like attempting to pry these plates apart with a hammer and a chisel or something along those lines. Apart from that, we have a hardened steel shackle, which has been upgraded in the newer locks to a boron steel shackle. So that's one of the upgrades. And we do have a master lock style keyway here. Now, one difference to point out with the keyway right away is if we look at the master lock and the notorious loose tolerances of such a lock, if we look at the Commando lock, there's none of that. So manufacturing tolerances and the general fit and finish here are quite good. So 5-pin lock as well. And the operation of this is just extremely smooth. Put the key in, there's like no resistance to the core, no hang-ups, nothing. And you can see we have a dual ball bearing locking system here as well. So quite nice on that front. Very, very well manufactured, very high tolerances. Just overall fit and finish is very impressive. There are security pins in the core as well, so we have 5 security pins between serrated pins and spool pins. This is another thing, I think the entire core in general, but even the number of security pins have been upgraded in the newer locks, if I'm not mistaken. The newer ones use security pins both for the key pins, serrated key pins, and for the driver pins. Whereas these, I believe, only use security pins in the driver pins. So let's see what it takes to open one of these up with picking attack. And to do that, I'm going to use a 50 thousandths top of the keyway tensioner and my Sparrow's Tron pick. And we'll go right to the back, pin number 5, and get started here. So click out of pin 5 right from the get-go. At least I think that was pin 5. Yes, click there, and then we have a little bit of a false set. The core moved in any case. Click out of pin 4, and now we're definitely into a false set. So 3, counter rotation on 3. Nice click out of 3 and a much deeper false set. And pin number 2, counter rotation on 2. And we have an open there. So that is that lock. Let's go ahead and take a look at this one. There is something about this lock that I want to point out here in a moment. But let's go ahead and pick this one and see what it takes to get into one of these as well. Again, basically the same lock, just visually a bit different. Nice finish though. I actually find this is a rather attractive finish for the lock. So back to pin 5. And we have a click on pin 5, just a tiny movement on the core. Click on pin 4 and we are in a false set. Pin 3, we have counter rotation. Tiny click out of pin 3, and I think we went into a deeper false set, but I still have counter rotation. So let's see. Yep, now another click out of pin 3. Pin 2. Nothing really on pin 2, so let's go to pin 1. Counter rotation on pin 1. Click there, and we also have an open with this lock. So not too bad. Not too bad of a pick. The core actually makes it really nice to set those spool pins. In a one thing I didn't mention here is there's actually no spring tension on this core. It doesn't have any resistance to it at all. And oftentimes on a lock with a spring tension on the core, you can use that spring tension to your advantage when trying to set those spool pins. A core that has really no spring tension on it, in theory, would be more difficult to do that. However, these locks are so smooth that it really doesn't make a major difference. Just the pick alone is enough to kind of pull that core back so you can get that spool pin set. The pressure of the pick on the pin alone is, I should state. So I want to lock this back up because I do want to demonstrate something about this lock that's just an unfortunate side effect of the bitting of this lock. So again, I'll show the key here, and you can see that it's pretty uniform bitting across the board here. It actually looks like we might have two of the same bitting here and then an increment of one, and really pin 5 is the only one that's largely different in terms of adjacent bitting. And even with security pins in the core, unfortunately, a poor bitting like that is going to leave this susceptible to low skill attacks like raking. And that's what I wanted to demonstrate here with one of the Sparrow's Palmer Wicked Waves. So this is the rounded one with the higher frequency waves, and I'll use a bottom of the keyway tensioner while I attempt to rake this. And this is definitely, unfortunately, a rakeable lock because of that poor bitting, although it seems to be putting up more of a fight than I typically get out of it, of course, at this point in time. So let me just stop here for a moment and kind of reset. There we go. And we did get that raked open. Definitely took longer than I expected it to there. So let's give that one more shot and let's see if we can get it open any faster with a raking attack this time. And the interesting thing is if this goes to a false set, then it's going to be very difficult to rake this. But because of that bitting, it's possible to completely bypass that false set and get this raked open. However, I seem to just be managing to get it into a false set. So of course, when I want to demonstrate this is when it's not going to happen. But yeah, something to keep in mind is even with security pins, that bitting still matters a lot in terms of resistance to low skill attacks like raking or zipping a lock or things like that. So just something to call out there. Not really Commando's fault in this case, apart from the bitting choice that was made for this particular lock, but it happens. So, any case, thank you very much for joining me for this video. Until next time, take care, everyone, and I will talk to you later.